Hey guys, what's up? In this video, I'm going to change things up a bit. Not only will I cover some key analysis points, but I'm also going to be throwing a couple essay questions your way that could come up in your classroom. Now, hopefully, if this stuff helps you guys can help us out by liking, commenting, subscribing, the whole social media game. Also, this scene does cover some sexual content, so if you're uncomfortable with that, you may not want to watch this lesson. However, if you're watching this video, it's probably because you need to study the play, and Shakespeare's works do usually involve some form of sexual or misogynistic content. And finally, if we do cover that kind of content in any of the other scenes, as well as this one, we'll be approaching it from an academic standpoint. Anyways, let's get into it. So in Act 1, Scene 3, we get to see a full introduction to Laertes, his sister Ophelia, and their father Polonius. One of the first things to notice about Ophelia and Laertes' relationship is the overwhelming amount of authority that Laertes seems to have over Ophelia's choices. Now, it's almost like Laertes is Ophelia's older brother, boss, and boyfriend all at the same time. In fact, the very first thing he says is basically, "My things are packed, and as long as the winds blow and the ships can sail, don't sleep, write to me." It seems as if he's basically ordering his sister to send him reports and updates, even if she has to sacrifice her sleep to do it. And in response, she says, "Do you think I wouldn't do that?" Which could be interpreted as her not being bothered by this. I mean, maybe she's just used to having her older brother boss her around like that. But instead of answering the question, Laertes just moves on and starts bad-mouthing Hamlet. From what he says to her, we can see that Hamlet's been flirting with Ophelia, and Laertes has something to say about that. He thinks that Hamlet's flirting is trifling, which means unimportant, and refers to Hamlet's flirting as basically a toy in blood, basically saying that Hamlet's only flirting with Ophelia because he's young and he just wants to fool around. And then of course we covered the next part in the summary, but Laertes also says that Hamlet's flirting is just going to be a temporary thing. Forward, not permanent, sweet, not lasting, the perfume and suppliance of a minute, no more. So from this, we get that Laertes doesn't really respect Hamlet's intentions towards his sister. And when it comes to Ophelia's opinion, he never even asks her once how she feels about the situation. He just instructs her and commands her to stay away from Hamlet and forget about him. He also says, "Then weigh what loss your honor may sustain, if with too credent ear you list his songs, or lose your heart, or your chaste treasure open to his unmastered importunity." Which basically means, and again this is one of my dumbed down interpretations, think about how your reputation might be damaged if you fall for Hamlet's words too easily, or if you fall in love with him, or if you open your virgin treasure chest to his greedy, desperate begging. Now, considering the time frame and the culture when this play was written, it would be okay for an older brother to advise his younger sister on how to manage her reputation, who to stay away from, and to especially not be so easy about giving up her virginity. Later on in the scene, Ophelia says something back in response to this that can be seen as really weird and disturbing. Laertes says, "Farewell, Ophelia, and remember well what I have said to you." And in response, Ophelia says, "'Tis in my memory locked, and you yourself shall keep the key of it." So recapping everything that just happened between Laertes and Ophelia, Laertes was being really protective and commanding when it came to Ophelia and Hamlet, and he told his sister to keep her treasure closed, referring to her virginity. And then Ophelia responds by saying, "Well, you yourself shall keep the key of it," which makes it sound like there's potentially a sexual twist going on here. Now, just keep that in the back of your head, because I'll come back to it later. But for now, let's just go over some of the key characteristics of the players who we've met so far. So Ophelia's role could be seen as kind of weak, based on the fact that she just takes her brother's orders, although it could be just loyalty too. Laertes' role as a character is introduced as pretty commanding, and it seems that he might see himself as superior to Ophelia based on the underlying commanding tone in his lines. And Ophelia and Laertes' relationship has the possibility of including some kind of incestuous element to it, and we'll just have to wait and see if the story presents more evidence to see if that's actually the case or not. Alright, so now let's move on and cover what happened with one of my favorite characters in the play, Polonius. And when Polonius comes in, well, he tells Laertes, hey, hurry up and get on the ship because you're late. And then he ends up getting caught up in his own train of thought and blabs on for like 10 minutes. And the way we've designed Polonius is actually meant to reflect this part of his character. So we see him as this kind of funny old man who tries to look really smart by using a lot of words, but he uses so many words that he ends up just pretty much looking stupid sometimes. And some of you might even kind of hate this kind of character. So Polonius's conversation with Ophelia pretty much covers the same things that Laertes said to her as well. Basically, Polonius wants Ophelia to stop interacting with Hamlet because Polonius, like Laertes, thinks that Hamlet's only interested in Ophelia and flirting with her because of youthful infatuation. And so this kind of strengthens the point we made earlier about Ophelia looking like a weak character. Not only does she submit to her brother's orders, but she submits to her father's orders as well. Now, in your essays, assignments, and tests, you're most likely going to be asked at some point to find evidence to support an argument or opinion you may have. So here's a practice question for you. Is Ophelia really a weak, submissive character? Use evidence to support your argument. So guys, there's really no 100% correct answer to this question. It's going to come down to how well you can support your argument. And the line of reasoning that we've taken at this point in the analysis so far has set up Ophelia as this docile, submissive character. However, there is evidence of the opposite. So right after Laertes finishes giving his advice and his commands really to Ophelia, she responds by saying, "I shall the effect of this good lesson keep as watchman to my heart. But, good my brother, do not, as some ungracious pastors do, show me the steep and thorny way to heaven, whiles, like a puffed and reckless libertine, himself the primrose path of dalliance treads and recks not his own reed." Which, if I dumb it down, it kind of means, I'll take your advice seriously, but don't give me this advice like some hypocritical religious leader forcing me to live by this restricted set of rules, while you, like a playboy, have casual, brief relationships and don't follow your own advice. So, although most of her responses so far to both Laertes and her father Polonius have been rather neutral, which could be interpreted easily as weak, docile, or submissive, this one quote shows that she's definitely capable of not being limited to those characteristics. Now, let's take a closer look at that quote. So, depending on how you interpret this quote, or how it could be interpreted, and I'm just going to give two options here, it could either come off as a really snappy, "don't talk to me like that" kind of response, or it could come off as a kind of accepting response, like maybe, "Okay, I'll listen to you, but please just promise me that you'll take the same advice that you gave me." And we know that amongst the other advice that Laertes gave her earlier, one of the things he said, and one of the pieces of advice that he gave, was don't give up your virginity. Okay, so that being said, I have another essay question for you, and this time try to come up with some supporting evidence, or try to just at least come up with some reasons for the side of the argument that you're on. And the question is, do Ophelia and Laertes have a hidden, possibly incestuous relationship? Explain using evidence. Now, there's no single right answer here, but there are arguments for and against the question based on the evidence in the scene. But let's follow up on the line of reasoning that supports the possibility of a hidden and maybe even incestuous relationship. And if the lines from this quote are interpreted as if Ophelia's pleading Laertes to not have casual relationships, then it has some serious implications regarding what she said about Laertes being the only one who has this key to her chaste treasure. Remember, Laertes suggested that if she opened up her chaste treasure, she might risk her reputation, which shows that Laertes thinks the opening of Ophelia's chaste treasure is a negative thing. And if we interpret what Ophelia said in this quote as a veiled or hidden request for Laertes to also keep his chaste treasure, then when she says that he will be the only one to have the key to it, she's really using this as a metaphor to suggest that he's the only one who she'll give her virginity to. Here's the thought process laid out in detail. Laertes thinks that Ophelia should defend her virginity and tells her to keep her chaste treasure closed. In return, Ophelia pleads Laertes to also keep his chaste treasure. And finally, when Laertes tells her to remember what he said about her virginity, Ophelia says, "You yourself shall keep the key of it." Therefore, in this line of reasoning, their references to chaste treasure and key can be seen as not only symbolizing the opening of a treasure chest, but can also be seen as a metaphor for sexual intercourse. So this is one of the reasons why Shakespeare's plays are considered to be so amazing. The story makes you think about your position on an argument. See, because the same story will be interpreted differently by different people with different perspectives. The same story can even be changed by an actor's performance to suggest different meanings. And for us, as the audience, we can then decide on which interpretation we want to side with. But remember, if you're asked to state your opinion on a certain argument and you're kind of on the fence, you're 50-50, you're not sure, you still need to at least be able to show supporting evidence for both sides to show your understanding of the play. So in the end, if you do want to improve your essay writing skills, especially for this Shakespeare stuff, you need to know the story pretty well. Then you need to know which side of any given argument you're on, and then you need to be able to find the evidence for it. Alright guys, that about does it for Hamlet's Act 1 Scene 3 analysis. If you liked this video lesson and it helped you, please share it with your friends and classmates. But if it didn't help you exactly where you needed the help, or if you have any questions, leave those in the comments so we can address those and get some discussion going around them. Finally, we are also going to be coming out with videos similar to these analysis videos for calculus, chemistry, physics, and other topics as well. So if you're interested in those, hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you guys in Act 1, Scene 4. Peace!